It almost felt like a dream. I woke up to my dog Lucy barking. She was upright on the bed where my husband and I were sleeping with our 22-month-old daughter, staring at our door like an unknown stranger was out there rummaging around. I thought she was just freaking out over a house noise. We'd only had her for 3 months, and she was still a puppy. It could have been anything: our roommate, a creak from the house settling, the awnings moving outside in the breeze. I wasn't too concerned initially. I decided the best bet would be to open the door and show her nothing was there. It sounds a bit silly, but it's what we do with our daughter when she gets scared, and I figured it should work with a puppy too. I opened the door and she raced to the front door. She stood there snarling at the door. It was an angry, violent growl, one I had never heard her make before. I looked groggily at her and opened the baby gate blocking the doorway, planning to open the door and show her everything was okay. The second my hand reached for the deadbolt, Lucy went wild. She started barking and jumping toward me, and when I touched the metal, she suddenly changed her temper. She whimpered, almost like she was afraid and backing down. As her mannerism changed, so did mine. I wasn't calm anymore. My heart was racing and sinking at the same time. I had been flooded with a mixture of fear and dread. I looked through the peephole. I can't explain why I looked, but I did. Outside were 2 kids. One was just a smidgen shorter than me and didn't look much younger. I'm 21, and she looked to be 16 or 17. She was slender and pale. Her hair was a light shade of honey blonde, and she wore it long, about mid-back, with long, thin, blunt bangs in the front that covered most of her eyes. She wore jeans, a light wash that's popular right now, and a thin-looking olive-colored pullover-style hoodie. She held the hand of a small girl, who looked to be around 3 or 4, in the same style jeans and a button-down ivory cardigan. The smaller one looked at the floor shyly, but had the same shade of hair, tied back in a ponytail. She held a stuffed toy under her free arm, and it was identical to one my daughter has, as was their style of dress. Had it not been for the feeling of overwhelming dread and fear, I probably would have asked these children in and given them some tea or hot chocolate to get them out of the bitter cold. Something about them seemed off. At this point, I hadn't made any noise. I hadn't shushed the dog or grumbled, nothing. I hadn't turned on any lights. These kids had no indicators I was at the door. The older one spoke. She had a voice that was mature, confident, strong, and accentless. She held her head tilted downward, and I couldn't see her eyes. She said, "We have to use your phone." I stood frozen in fear. How did she know I was there? She raised her head to face me directly, and that was when I saw her eyes. There was a reason I couldn't see them through her bangs before. They were black, or midnight blue, or a dark, dark purple. They were otherworldly. She said, "Our mother is worried." As someone who has always been interested in creepy stories, I knew what she was the second she looked at me through the door. I was standing with nothing but a thin wooden door between me and a black-eyed kid.
Black-eyed kids. There are plenty of theories out on the World Wide Web to discuss and try to explain away the stories about black-eyed children. Some say that they are alien entities, others say that they are vampires, some say that they are spirits of dead children. But tonight I want to touch on a much darker possibility. What if black-eyed children and black-eyed people in general are actually demons or demonically possessed individuals? The first few podcasts I ever listened to by Astonishing Legends were the episodes on black-eyed kids. And I had heard roughly the kind of like legend, urban legend or whatever, surrounding black-eyed children, but I never really like dug into it or really tried to understand what they were. And as I was listening to the podcast, that old school quote, "The eyes are the windows to the soul," popped into my head. Now, 5 seconds later, one of the guys who does the podcast said that exact same quote. So obviously, great minds think alike, but also it points to a valid truth with black eyes and with other monsters and other creatures who are said to have red eyes or red glowing eyes. Well, what does that mean about their soul? Exactly. The legend of black-eyed kids officially boomed in 1996 when a Texas journalist actually reported his own incident with black-eyed kids. Now, that was the first super publicized, hyped up event that took place with black-eyed children. But one thing I absolutely love about Astonishing Legends is they really dig deep and try to find even more history to tell us about the different legends and myths and things like that. And they did not disappoint with what they discovered. Back in 1982, there was a rash of reportings in the UK of black-eyed children sightings. Most of the theories in the UK were that they were ghosts. They were the spirits of possibly even angry children who had died. In 1974, France had their own reportings and sightings of black-eyed children that kind of swept the countryside. And all the way back into 1950 in Virginia, there was one report of a boy coming home who, on his family's pretty extensive land, saw a young boy leaning on the fence post. But there was something off about the boy. As he approached the boy, as he was passing the boy to walk up to his home, the boy turned to him, looked at him, and apparently had black obsidian eyes. And then proceeded to act like all the other black-eyed children in all the other stories, begging him to take him home, telling him he had to take him home, he had to take him inside of his house, things like that, which we'll get into that in just a second. But with Astonishing Legends, they dug back even further. They dug back to Native Americans, ancient Indians in America, the Iroquois, I hope I'm saying that right, all the way back into the 1700s and 1800s. Where the Native Americans would speak of people, especially children, who have black eyes and depict them in art. In ancient art, there were people depicted with black eyes who were said to have like the Atkan, or however you say it, which is like a negative spirit or a negative entity taking hold of them. There's also Scandinavian lore and things like that that reference people with black eyes and things like that. So this isn't just a fad. This isn't just a internet sensation, although it definitely became that after the Texas journalist incident in 1996. So let's talk about some hallmark signs of black-eyed kids, other than the obvious black eyes, right? So these are kids that tend to just materialize out of practically nowhere. Not that they like literally materialize and go invisible right in front of your eyes or anything, but they just kind of show up out of nowhere. There's no like rational explanation for how they got there necessarily. In most stories about black-eyed kids, there is some form of mind control or telepathy going on where the kids can almost hear or understand the person's thoughts. They try to coerce, they try to seduce, they try to manipulate the person into letting them inside their home or their car or by interacting with them in some way. And it's really creepy how violent some of these stories have become when the person backs down, because I mean, we all have a very deep survival instinct in us, and I think that our very soul can feel the wrongness and the evilness from a being or a person and things like that. And it kind of serves as a warning sign of, hey, you've got to get the hell away from these people right now. Most stories say these kids are anywhere from 6 to 16. Some of them are teenagers. There's been one story of a young adult, maybe she was in her early 20s. And there have also been stories of these like young kids pushing around baby strollers, and people were too terrified to even look into the stroller to see if there was like a black-eyed baby inside of the stroller. Some people theorize that these entities show up as children because that tends to prey on our adult, and a lot of times with women, our mothering and nurturing instinct to help children who are lost, or to help children who seem like they're in some kind of trouble. Most of us would help a child if the child was just lost, wandering aimlessly around with no parent around, you know? Also, a lot of these stories took place in like severe weather, cold weather, rainy weather, almost always at nighttime, which of course, like, okay, any freaking psychotic horror movie ever, it's always at nighttime and it's usually in bad weather. I'm not sure why these negative entities tend to just like feed off of that, but they sure know how to pick their timing. One thing that stuck out to me about these black-eyed kids was that it doesn't seem that they can enter your space without your permission. That's why they're trying to like coerce you into allowing them inside. And as we've talked about in the previous demonology series that I've been doing, demons often will need your permission to have influence over your life. And so that kind of stuck out to me as possibly leaning towards demonic entities, or possibly kids that are demonically possessed, maybe. Some of the stories, these kids will be dressed in old-timey clothing, like clothing that doesn't really make sense for the time. And in others, they will be dressed in like dark clothing, hoodies, some kind of hoods or hats covering their eyes. Some of the kids have even had like bangs and things like that that kind of hide the eyes at first. Another key element is that in quite a few of these stories, the kids have come with some kind of smell. I'm not talking BO or things like that, but people will oftentimes describe a sulfur smell, perhaps brimstone, things like that, around these children or after the children depart, which to me screams demonic. But again, I'm not trying to find a demon behind every single corner. It's just, it strikes me as a little bit odd. You know, sulfur, black eyes, horrible sense of evil and foreboding. Now, a lot of skeptics will try to explain this away as just like punk kids playing around. They got their hands on some fancy contacts, because they do make contacts that will completely black out your eye. But if you look up the expense measure of these contacts, they are quite expensive, and it doesn't necessarily explain away all the other factors that go along with these stories. It would just explain away, you know, if some kids were playing a prank on you and they ran away laughing into the night, that would make sense. But all the other creepy, freaky factors of these stories don't really add up to just kids playing around with some fancy contacts. So like we've already described, witnesses often feel a heavy, intense feeling of evil around these children. And as I've always said and will always say, your soul tells you when there's something wrong, when you are in spiritual danger, not just physical danger, but like soul-shattering danger. Your soul tells you these things. And when, like, every single one of these witnesses will say that they had a horrifying like fear and sense of foreboding and sense of just evil emanating from these children. And to me, that screams demonic in a way, or at least something that is severely negative and angry and hateful. Because, I mean, no kind of creature of light and love or of God would give off that kind of feeling, if that makes sense. Some other features of black-eyed kids is they tend to be very emotionless. They don't move around a lot, which is kind of odd because kids usually are kind of antsy, especially when they're around strangers. And they speak very intelligently, like of a higher intelligence than their age. You know, so like there's been some stories of these 6-year-old children speaking in almost like old world English, and that just doesn't really make sense, which could speak to the theory that they are spirits in a way, because if they're a spirit from another time, they might have actually spoken that way. But the creepiest thing about black-eyed kids is the fact that they try to demand their way into your home, your car, or whatever space you have around you. They try to force their way into your life. They try to force you to give them permission to come into your space. Now, from all the stories that I've read, the children themselves have never become physically violent. They've never assaulted anyone. No one has ever been physically harmed by these children directly. But there have been some cases where people have let the children inside. And that's where it gets really spooky. There have been several cases of people who have allowed these black-eyed kids inside of their homes and then later on would become ill. And I'm not talking about, oh, I have a cold. I'm talking about literally after seeing these black-eyed kids and inviting them into their house, they would be diagnosed with cancer heavy duty cancer. They would be on death's door all of a sudden. They would have horrible things happen to them and their loved ones once they invited these black-eyed children inside, which to me speaks a little bit towards the demonic or some kind of other negative entity. Because first off, why would this entity need permission into your home? And then once that permission is granted, why would they then try to hurt you or do anything like that? You know? And a lot of people who have just seen the black-eyed children and not even actually invited them in have then suffered weeks or months, possibly even years of nightmares about them, of like having loss of appetite, feeling very just like lethargic and bad. And some have even claimed to have return visits by the black-eyed kids, which to me would be absolutely terrifying. So this isn't just an internet sensation. This isn't just like some person somewhere decided to put it on Reddit and all of a sudden it's like this fangirl woo moment like Slender Man or something like that, which we'll get to Slender Man at some point because I have some theories on him. And if you haven't already seen some of my previous videos on the paranormal, especially from last Halloween when I did a full 31 days of Halloween, I really encourage you guys to go check that out because we will be diving back into some of those topics over the summer and getting a little more in-depth view of those topics. And again, if you guys want to see any of these topics firsthand, or if you have any topics that really are just calling to you that you want to hear about, you want to hear my opinions on, go ahead and comment down below and let me know because I'm all about the paranormal right now. And we're gonna have a very creepy, freaky, deaky summer. So other than that, I want to ask you guys, have y'all ever had any experience with black-eyed kids? What do you think they are? Do you think they might be a demonic evil entity? Do you think they might be aliens or ghosts or things like that? I mean, they've never physically touched anyone, so who's to say that they're physical children at all, right? I want to hear some of y'all's theories about black-eyed kids. What are your thoughts? Where is the proof, do you think? Is it all some giant hoax? Is it all some kind of, mass hallucination? What are your opinions on that? Please comment down below. But be kind to each other in the comment sections. We're very open-minded here, obviously. Other than that, guys, that's pretty much all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed that intro. I'm going to be doing a little more spooky intros like that in the future. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that thumbs up. You guys, the thumbs up is so important because it really lets me know if I'm on the right track, if this is something you guys enjoyed, and if this is like a good place to be at for the future, So if you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and comment down below. And if you haven't already, subscribe. And I know a lot of my viewers don't actually have accounts on YouTube, but I do encourage you guys to make a YouTube account. Even if you don't subscribe to me, it's really nice to be able to subscribe to all the YouTubers you love to watch. You can make playlists, you can do all sorts of really awesome things, because I mean, it's YouTube. Who doesn't need YouTube in their life? Right? I hope you enjoyed tonight's special creepy episode, and I really hope you guys are having a really awesome day, month, and year. Also, I just want to leave you guys with a warning that was passed on to me from a lot of different people, including the folks at Astonishing Legends. Once you know about black-eyed kids, there is a possibility that you will be visited by black-eyed kids. I'm not sure if that's true or if that's just a part of the sensationalization, if that's a word, of the story, but I just thought I would put that out there. If you do encounter black-eyed kids, do not let them in, no matter what. I don't care how badly your fingers want to open the door and allow them in. I don't care. Do not ever let black-eyed kids inside of your home or your vehicle, or if you see them out and about, get as far away from them as quickly as you can. Other than that, you guys, I love you. Stay safe out there. It is a very scary world we live in. And yeah,